Just like Michelangelo into the blue on heavenly wings. Cargo hand bones don't take off, no smoke, no mirror, no strings. I can't take off these dark shades. I can only say how it's too beautiful. Our town on TV, our town, there's you and me. Upside down, hanging out of an airplane.
Hi, welcome to Our Town. I'm from Merrimac Senior Center, and I'd like to introduce Annmary, who will introduce her guest.
We're here today to see Congressman Tierney at the Merrimac Senior Center and our wonderful host, Laura Mailman. So Laura is the Council on Aging Director here in Merrimac, so I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Annmary, and welcome. This is the Merrimac Senior Center. I am Laura Dillingham Mailman, the director here in Merrimac at the Council on Aging, and we're very pleased to have Congressman Tierney here today to speak with us about issues that may be of interest to seniors and others as well. We're going to be listening to him and asking any questions that we may have, and we would like to welcome the Congressman to our Senior Center and thank him for the time that he has taken to be with us.
So let's get started.
Well, the House we did pass a bill for the relief to the cities and towns. All right, and that went through.
This is like Bell, California, if you watch to see what happened. I mean, that is an absolute disgrace to every citizen alive.
Absolutely.
On that. But the problem here is even cities and towns. I come from Newburyport, and I see them continue to spend, and yet now they want to increase people's taxes on the food, I mean, the restaurants and the inns. And I don't see what that solves, because we're so close to this border. Do I have to eat in Newburyport? No, I don't. You know?
Well, that's the choice for Newburyport to make. I mean, it's
Right.
a local law, so
Yeah,
it's
but
not,
see,
nobody's
then
imposing it on anybody.
Monies will come to help bail them out for things that they probably, with the unions, that they really should be watching, and I don't believe they are.
I guess the real question on that is, what services do you want? I mean, what do you expect your city or your town to provide for you? They've been cutting back. People are shutting off their street lights. People are cutting back. The kids don't take art. They don't take music. They don't have physical education. Some places they're not even teaching civics. What kind of community do you want to live in? You know, I'm sure they can keep pulling things back. The always thing is, waste, fraud, and abuse. There's always waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, at some point in time, you go to your local city councilor or your local school committee person and ask them if they're just sort of happy that there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse around and why don't they go get it? They'll tell you they are paring things back. When they send out a list to your mothers and fathers that they should bring paper towels to school and toilet paper, as well as rulers and crayons and everything, I mean, it's fine. Yeah, they can always pare back. But many of them will tell you, look, we are paring back.
Well, I guess I'm at the age where we didn't have to bring pencils and papers to school.
No, but you know, you're at the age where people paid their fair share. You know, things are more expensive now. And things when I went to school, I didn't have to have a computer in the classroom. That was the sentence. But now, if you want your grandson or granddaughter to go to school and have a computer, because they're certainly going to have to know how to use it to get a job, then that's more expensive. So if we went back to how school was when I was there, how school was when you were there, it'd be a lot cheaper. All right, we could put all those other things back because we don't have the additional expense of computers and technology and teaching people the different things that have changed and gone on. So that's the issue.
It isn't just the purchase of the computers. It has to be.
It's an example of what I'm saying. But you know, the issue is, if you think your local people haven't cut deep enough and you want them to cut deeper, that's what you have local elections for and local meetings for. There are a lot of parents that I talk to and grandparents are out there saying, like, look, I want my kid to get the kind of education that I had. I don't want them being. I'm looking at in Hawaii, they close down schools 1 day a week. That's how close they were. Now, the people as a group out there they were furious about it, but the choice was that nobody could point to anything else to cut, and they didn't want to raise their taxes. So they closed
I'm just
school
concerned how
on
many
Fridays,
Bell-
every
how many
Friday.
Bell communities there are out there. That's the
Well, I don't know, but I don't live in a Bell community. I live in Salem. I think my mayor, my city council, and
No,
the
I
school
mean,
committee are
I
working
don't believe
very,
I
very
live in
hard.
a Bell community
I know
either.
Donna Holliday and the school committee and city council in Newburyport are not Bell.
No,
you know,
that's what I
everything.
said, I don't.
It's a bit of the problem with the internet and with this sensationalism on TV. I can always get you an antidote that'll drive you, in a direction say like, oh, look at that community, all government is bad, or all cities are bad, or on that
No, I
basis
didn't
like
say
that.
all government
No, I
is
know you
bad.
didn't, but I think that's what they try to drive you to when they put that on TV. That same TV newscast that did it, there was other news that day that they just didn't put any attention to. I think one of the stories, somebody was mentioned this, one of my neighbors mentioned that the other day, so I was thinking about it. There was a story in there about an energy company that has started up and doubled its capacity of people that they hired. And it was a really good thing. They had invested into it. It brought new technology on board and it was more competitive. They spent something like less than 30 seconds on that story and over 3 minutes on the Bell story. Now, there are more technology companies like that coming online and good things happening out there. And the one example they could find was Bell on that. So we get sort
Well,
of
I think
twisted
the
by watching
residents, too,
our
are
news.
upset. The residents are upset.
We're all upset. Like, everybody's upset. When things, look at during the Depression, people were upset, rightfully so. This is a recession that if we don't keep working at it, no, I've read about it, though we've all done history, but,
Well, yeah.
and the problem is a lot of people don't remember it from firsthand experience on that. But when you have Mark Sandy, who I respect, he's a real conservative guy, he's John McCain's guy, but he's a smart guy, and I think he shoots straight. And you have Paul Krugman, all these guys agreeing that, you have to do something to get people working. That's first and foremost. If we're not working, then we're not America. We're not going. And we should be making things in this country. We should be exporting things, not just taking everything in, not getting beat by lower people to get $1.80 a day somewhere else. And we've got to move our policies on that direction. And we've got to decide, are we going to keep our cities and towns and states able to produce the things that we rely on them for, good streets, street lights, schools, health clinics where it's appropriate in some communities, senior services. That isn't free. That's part of your taxes on that. All the things that people in this room are working for the benefit of the seniors in this community, that, somebody's got to pay for that, and there's no corporation stepping out doing that, and no private business doing it. We do that as a community. We decide that we think this is important, and we do it.
Congressman, you have a question?
I think what this lady is describing at a local level is basically because of promises made in the past. Pensions are certainly a large part of that, public pensions. Eat up a lot of local budgets, eat up a lot of state budgets. Basically, right now, the future has to pay for the past. We're in huge debt across all levels of government, the federal government primary among them. I think I worry about my kids, I worry about my grandkids, great-grandchildren when they come. 100 years out there, there'll still be a federal debt they're going to be paying off because of the things we do today. The ultimate goal is to have the present pay for the present and not have the future pay for the past. And nothing I can see that's happening in any government at any level today is getting us toward that goal.
No. Well, you may not see it, but in your local thing, they have to live within their means. That's why they're cutting back on all of this stuff. So they may bond for some issues.
The street lights, you can't do the art because of promises made in the past.
Right.
Well, not necessarily, there's some of that, but mostly because the economy's bad. Mostly because nobody's
I don't buy it.
working.
I don't buy it.
You're going to buy it, but I'm not an economist, all right? So I have to rely on people that are smarter than me in that area and see whether it makes sense or not. But when you go to the economists and everything, and they say to you, look, you don't have any income coming into your cities and towns. It's part of what their expenses are, and part of their expenses are to pay for people's pensions and for their health care and things like that, and you can negotiate all of that. I agree, though, that's on the table, and you've got to decide what you're going to do with that. But your primary problem is you don't have any revenues coming in right now. When people don't work, they don't pay their taxes. This is less of a problem when the economy is fully employed and people are paying their taxes and you're going along. You don't hear nearly as much of that. It still should be an issue. You still should decide what you think is appropriate for pensions and what is for health
You
care.
do more with the revenue you get if 90% of it isn't already committed.
Well,
Then they spend it.
I think what the economists are telling us on the large area of that is if you decide just to roll with the revenues that you get, you're going to go into deflation and then into a depression. Because when people aren't working, all right, there's just no economy. So you got to get people to work. Somebody has to create a market. Somebody has to be spending something to get people working. That's just basic economics. Even though I'm not a genius or anything like that, I took the basic courses on that, and I understand that if you don't have people working and people aren't spending, then there's going to be no reason for the guy next to him to be working or the woman next to them working, and it just keeps going down the hill. So what they're saying is, look, families are all pulling in tight because they've either lost their job or they're afraid of losing their job. Their house value has gone down. Their pension is taking a hit for all that have had that problem.
It went down, but it didn't go down 30%.
Right, but I'm saying, so for all except those that were well invested or like that, they've taken a hit. And the bottom line of that is, so who's going to spend? It can't be the state and the cities and the towns. It's not the families and businesses are sitting back. Then you've got two choices. You can say, well, you know what, that's just too bad. We're all going to suck it up and we'll just go through another depression and eventually we'll come out. Or you can learn the lessons that they learned in the last depression with Roosevelt or whatever and say, you know what, we're not going to do that. That's what Hoover did. Hoover sat around for a long enough period of time that people finally got so bad they worked with FDR to keep trying things until it worked to get people out, to keep trying to get people back to work. All right, and that's what gets your economy back going, and that's what moves it around. And so, yeah, somebody's got to spend. Now, the entity that can spend is the federal government because it's large enough. It can spread it out enough on that. And it did. It spent some money in the Recovery Act. Look, you were talking, $750 billion, $780 billion. It's a lot of money. But it's a one-time hit, and when the economy grows, that'll be gone. It's not systemic. It's not like the Iraq War, which is $3 trillion plus going forward. It's not like the tax cuts of 2001 and 2003, which is $1.7, $1.8 trillion plus interest going forward. It's not that $11.5 trillion that was handed to this president. It's you can either watch that grow because everything goes to a halt and starts spinning downward, or you can make an investment to put people back to work. Now, the question is, was it a big enough investment given the size of our economy that we got enough people back to work that we can get this thing going again? All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I recall my history correctly, John Kennedy allowed...
You're probably a history teacher. You're drawing us in on this,
No,
right?
no.
Okay.
I'm an engineer. John Kennedy passed an executive order which allowed public sector to form unions. Am I correct on that?
I don't know if it was his era that did it or not. I mean, it was a
That's
law
how
passed
it
for it.
happened. My
The
question-
public sector unions, I thought, came around with the National Labor Relations Board, which was in the 30s.
No.
You're talking about the public sector on that as opposed to
Yeah,
the private.
public
Okay, so I'm not sure what date that was.
No. I think it was by executive order. My question is actually, how do we get out of it?
I suppose you could pass another law if you wanted to. But
Would you vote for it?
no, I don't have a problem with unions. I have a problem with people that make bad deals with them and then complain about unions. I mean, it's negotiation. I think that there's reasons to have unions out there. I think they were put in place because there were abuses that happened to people when they were hired politically or fired politically or mistreated. The stories are legion of people being, elected and put in positions because they knew somebody or related to somebody on that
Does that
basis.
still happen in Massachusetts?
I don't know about that. I mean, that's a different issue. But the issue is that there were certain union protections and certain benefits to a community to be able to negotiate with one person on behalf of a lot instead of having a different negotiation with everybody else.
The thing is that it seems to me that this has to be corrected at the national level, not the local level. Otherwise, my town couldn't say, well, we're going to abolish any municipal union and have it stand. It has to be where there's some way that everybody can get out of it if they so choose.
Well, first of all, I don't understand why you'd want to abolish all the municipal unions. I think that you have issues with...
We're just talking about all of the retirement benefits and everything else.
So you want to renege on all the retirement benefits, or
No, but I want to stop them.
so negotiate your next contract so you stop it?
Just hear this out. It used to be in municipalities, especially when I was growing up, that people who were poor means, their way of getting a job was to work for the town, do streets and this sort of thing. They got low wages, they got to drive one of the town trucks, and they got a retirement. And this is the quid pro quo for the low wages. Now, you have people in the private sector making less than those in the public sector, and it's just turned around. Yet, their perks have been going up and up and up. You don't get the same deals in the private sector that you now get in the public sector. And we're all paying for it with our taxes.
Well, I work for a municipality. Let me just step in if I might. And I can honestly tell you that I get no perks. we have to work very closely with our selectmen. There's no outside benefits whatsoever. Were I to leave this position, I could probably pull in twice what I'm getting somewhere else. I work very, very hard, many more hours than I actually get paid for. And I really take umbrage that you would think that I am getting something out of this job where I really feel proud at what I'm doing for our community. And I think that you would find a lot of people working in their municipalities that feel the same way. We're required to have much higher education than the era in which you were speaking of. We have to have all kinds of degrees, depending on what it is that you're working for. You can't just go work for the highway department without knowing certain things. You can't just work for the sewage system without knowing that. The knowledge that is required to work in a municipality now is much higher than it ever was back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, even the 60s. I've been here for over 17 years. When I began working here, the level of knowledge that I needed to run the job was much different than what it is now in all actuality. We have much more things that are required of us at the state level, the federal level, and the local level. And we make serious reports about all of this sort of thing. So it's easy to say, yeah, you know, back when we didn't have to pay people more than minimum wage. But the requirements to do the job in a municipality now are much higher than they ever were before, just as it is for teachers. Teachers are required to do so much more than they ever were before. They have to get their master's. Who pays for that? It's very expensive going to college. It's very expensive to get your master's. You said you were an engineer. You can understand what that's like. So it's not cheap. And we need to give equitable wages for equitable work, whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector.
I'm not going to debate your particular case, but I will say that when you're in the private sector, you have those same exact requirements.
Right.
4 degrees.
And so you don't want to pay us the same that you would in the...
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that I had to go to school
Right.
all my whole career.
Right, and we do too.
In order to keep up, that was part of my professional development.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is with everybody.
And it is
But the thing
with us
is
as
when
well.
you retire, okay, you get a good-sized retirement, and it's based on your 3 top years. You don't get those sort of things in the private sector. That's,
But can I just say to that, I took a gamble coming into a town. I was 22, 23 when I started. If I don't make 10 years in a municipality, if I say I get fired after 9 years, I get laid off after 9 years, and I can't find another job in a municipality, those 9 years of my life, nothing. I don't have any social security that I'm putting into.
No.
I don't have that pension that I was
No
putting
pension.
into for those 9 years, or that retirement plan. It's gone. I get nothing. So for us to have this job and not make it past the 10 years, it's a huge gamble for us, for our family, for our husbands, for whoever. And it's not, our jobs aren't guaranteed year to year. Every budget season, we don't know.
Nobody's job is
It could be gone.
guaranteed.
And I'm not saying that anybody's is, but what I'm saying is that our retirement isn't guaranteed until
Private jobs usually vest a lot earlier than 9 or 10 years on that, for their pension on that. Private jobs oftentimes offer a savings plan that many times that the employer contributes into as well. Depends on the field you are, it depends on what your contract is.
Right.
And I guess that's the point. I think you didn't want to talk about Laura's individual case, and I can understand that. But you do have to talk about each individual case writ large. So the school nurse, the school nurse doesn't get paid necessarily comparably with a nurse out in private industry or one of the hospitals. And you have to look at that, go down to the city engineer, may not get paid as much as somebody working for one of the big engineering firms on that. And each municipality has to hire those people, and if they're management people, then they negotiate directly with them. The engineer presumably would probably be a management person of some sort, and negotiate for whatever the arrangement's going to be. If they're union represented, then they negotiate with the union. And if the union says, well, we will take less pay here, but we want some help with our education costs, and the town decides whether or not they think that's what they want to pay. They say, we'll take less of that, but we want to get a better health care plan, and they negotiate that, then that's what it is. The problem is that now we're in a tough economic time, and people in the private sector as well as people in the public sector are being laid off or losing parts of their pension because the economy has changed, and a lot of these corporations aren't standing up to their word on health care and on pensions. And so you get the feeling like, well, look what's happened to me, how come it's not happening to you? Everybody wants to drive everybody down as opposed to bring everybody up, or they don't want to go through the tough prospect of negotiating differences. I mean, every year, like the cities and towns, or every couple of years over the contract length is, people have an opportunity to sit down and negotiate. And that's, that's it. I mean, there are times as a citizen, I don't do the city and towns, but as a citizen, I've been like infuriated by some of the contracts that go on and say, like, that's bad negotiating. And that may be, and then you have to take that up at the local level. But I've represented some cities and towns in years past as their lawyer, negotiating with fire and police and all of that, and you can see how the process is going on that basis. You say, well, they should have done a better job, or maybe not. Yeah. Go ahead. Sure, go
Hi,
ahead,
how
thanks.
are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
What I'm seeing coming into the Amesbury Council on Aging is a lot more people who are not quite 60, who have lost their jobs, who have gone through their 401k, and because they're not 60, they're not eligible for a lot of services. And yet a lot of employers don't want to hire them because they're older Americans. And so now we're trying to piecemeal them. They can't get into housing because they're on long wait lists. They're not 60, they don't have an income. So we're finding more and more older Americans, not quite 60, coming through our doors asking for help.
Well, what should we do with people like that?
Well, you know what, I guess I'm just not in tune with, where is the rest of the family? I don't happen to be married, okay? But how many women that you see are married, don't they have children that could help them a little?
No, it's all families.
Maybe
You're
not.
talking families who are
No, I know
economically
family, I know
distraught.
that. I mean, if you're younger and you lose it, you're losing your job, you're losing your house, it's
Right.
desperate times. But she's talking about someone in their 60s.
No, in their 50s. 50s.
Yeah, but I
Still,
mean,
their kids are in college. Their kids are young and starting out. Do you know what I mean? They
Kids
don't
are 20 or
have.
30 years old, they can barely
They
make
can't. Do you know what I
not
mean?
if you're in your 60s.
It depends on when you had
I
children.
still,
Look, I ran into a fellow.
My mother didn't have any money either, but we helped her out.
Right,
You know what
and
I
some of
mean?
these families
So-
have helped out for a while, and they can't do it anymore because they have their own
Right.
children.
You know what, all I can recall is John Kennedy saying, okay, don't ask what the country can do for you, what can you do for your country? And it's getting to a point, this is the way I feel, that everybody wants something.
So let me ask you this, would you close all the senior centers?
No, I wouldn't on that.
Well, what if that's what somebody, no, I'm just saying, but you
they
have to
should
make
close
choices,
them.
all right? So what you're saying is, if you don't want to be working.
There are people out there that need help, okay? Nobody begrudges anybody who needs help. But I think the thing is that a lot of people, I'll take a neighbor, okay? Very good income, but they didn't have health insurance. And so they were very pleased with, these paying for their meds on that, when that Bush put that in there. But you know what happened to my meds? The amount that I was paying for my meds, it increased by 50%. So, okay, that these meds could be distributed to people who didn't have
Primarily, what happened there was we had an opportunity in 2003 to lower the cost of meds for everybody. We had two ways to do it that we proposed, and I proposed in particular. One was, why don't you negotiate with the prescription drug companies? All right, you've got 35 million seniors in Medicare. It's a pretty big market. And why don't you go to them and say, look, every other country in the world has some way to bring the cost down. Negotiating is one way.
We subsidize them through, we subsidize them.
Well, which is
in
crazy.
Canada.
But that's what drove your cost up.
But how do you expect to do research, okay, if I'm not saying they're not making a lot of money, the drug companies.
You couldn't possibly say that.
But so isn't the federal government. I mean, we should all have a printing press like the federal government, and then we'd all be on
But
easy
your printing
street.
press.
Yeah.
Your printing press.
Send me one, okay? And then I'll be glad to distribute money. to
They,
the senior citizens.
Well, these
And
senior citizens are
myself,
getting their money
starting
distributed
with
through the
myself.
I'm sure,
You know?
I'm sure. But the prescription drug thing is on a serious note for that. We had that opportunity in 2003, and we said, look, you should go to them and negotiate a price, just like you do with the Veterans Administration. Veterans Administration goes in and negotiates on
What I'm
behalf
saying
what
is
the
I
police.
am paying for somebody else. I happen to work, okay, and I got this benefit, but and it's still low. Oh, don't get me wrong, the amount of money I have to pay for my meds, but they increased by 50% in order to pay for someone who didn't, have this benefit.
I don't know that that's the direct correlation that you can draw, but what I'm telling you is the answer to not having them go up and have lower prices was simply to have said that we're going to negotiate with the prescription drug companies to bring them down to where they can make a profit, but they're not making a killing off of us, like every other country in the world seems to do, in the industrialized world on that basis, democracy. And we just couldn't win the vote on that. More people felt like, oh no, it's private market and you got to let it go. But when we did it for the veterans, they're about 46% lower than on that basis. So it would have made sense to do that. The other was to say, if you have a safely packaged, FDA-approved prescription drug coming in from Canada or somewhere else, then why not let that in to increase the competition that would drive their prices down? And we didn't win that argument at that time either. But you bring in Lipitor from Ireland, nobody seems to complain about it. It's FDA-approved, it's safely packaged, and you go on. So finally, this year, in the healthcare bill that we passed, we got the prescription drug companies to lower their prices substantially, and that's how we're going to get rid of that so-called gap that never should have happened. So that this year you get $250 back if you reach the gap, and every year after that they're going to start with 50% in 2011, and every year after that until 2019 they're going to eliminate that gap. So that now you won't be paying more for somebody else's. The prescription drug companies are going to be making a better deal.
It's going to come out of Medicare. Somebody has
It's coming
to,
out of the prescription drug companies.
Somebody
is what I'm
has to
telling you.
pay for it. Somebody has to pay for it.
And-
And then,
Do this for a second. Take these off like that. Now listen, prescription drug companies, all right, were brought to the table and told that you're going to give a 50% discount in the first year and then increase that discount all the way through. So that brings it down to a level where you'll now only have to pay, in 2020, you'll only have to pay 25% after you pay your deductible.
So if
And then when you reach-
my cost for my prescriptions come up, I'll call your office.
Call the prescription drug company, get another
call
distributor.
Everybody knows Annmary Connor, the director for the Amesbury Senior Center, so I'm going to give her the mic and let her introduce everybody.
Welcome to our town. We're here today in Merrimac with Congressman Tierney. Very excited to have you here.
Happy to be here. It was a good morning's discussion.
It was. And we have Dayna Brown from Elder Services of the Merrimac Valley. You want to tell us a little bit about what you do, Dayna?
Yeah, I'm the Director of Community Programs at Elder Services. I oversee all of our federal grant programs, our Older Americans Act programs.
Great. So Dayna does a lot of great stuff with Elder Services. We see her around a lot. She's a wonderful support. And also, Congressman Tierney, we have a big party coming up on August 26th.
We do. Finally
right?
going to break some ground on a good building project that's going to put some people to work and get your senior center located.
That's
in a good
right.
place.
We're very
That's great.
excited.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
August 26th, 10:15.
Now you know. Now you know.
15 Railroad Ave.
See
Can
you
I just
there.
thank you myself?
Sure.
One thing for coming, but I got to tell you, filming the event, you talked with a lot of facts. It was very slow. Everybody had a chance to ask whatever they wanted to ask. And watching it, I'm serious. You were great. And the facts, and when the viewers watch this, it's really going to show how much you know about what's going on.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
And your
I appreciate
sincerity.
it.
Thank you.
Jen,
Thank you, Annmary.
Thank you
Yeah, thank
very
you.
much.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Jane, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go away. That's it from the Merrimac Senior Center. So work hard, stay healthy, and please take time to care for someone, right?
That absolutely.
We're out here.
Come on down to the
Bye-bye.
Amesbury Senior Center.
Anytime. Bye-bye.
Just like Michelangelo into the blue on heavenly wings. Cargo ham bones don't take off, no smoke, no mirror, no strings. I can't take off these dark shades. I can only say how it's too beautiful. Our town on TV. Our town, there's you and me. Upside down, hanging out of an airplane.